The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than any city on Earth, with gleaming metal walls and bright lights that could be seen from far away. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports, bringing warriors and spectators to the greatest fighting tournament in the galaxy. Juan stepped off the Earth transport ship and looked around with wide eyes. He had never seen so many different kinds of aliens in one place. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. Others were covered in thick scales and stood twice as tall as any human. Strange beings made of pure energy floated past him, leaving trails of colored light in the air. "Stay close," said Nari, his childhood friend who had come as Earth's medical officer. She carried a bag full of human medical supplies and looked nervous. "Remember what they told us. Most of these species think humans are just violent animals." "Bomb." Their engineer adjusted his tool belt and nodded. "The briefing said they call us Deathworlders. They think we're only good for fighting and killing." He looked at the alien crowds with curiosity rather than fear. "Doesn't look like they're afraid of us, though." Juan watched a group of crystal beings walk past. They moved with grace and seemed to glow from within. One of them, taller than the others, turned to look at him. Her face was hard to read, but he could sense she was studying him like he was some kind of dangerous animal. "That's Veltar," Nari whispered. "She's the champion from Zarian Prime. Won the last 3 tournaments." The crystal being's eyes met Juan's for a moment. He smiled and nodded politely. Veltar tilted her head, clearly puzzled by the friendly gesture, then turned away. A loud roar echoed through the docking bay. A huge reptilian creature with red scales and sharp teeth was arguing with station officials. His voice was deep and threatening. "That must be Gask from the Draconis sector," Baum said quietly. The files said his species conquered 12 worlds before joining the Federation. Near the center of the bay, a being made of swirling energy pulsed with different colors. It had no solid form, just flowing light that somehow held together in a roughly humanoid shape. This was Zin from the Plasma Collective. "Welcome, champions," announced a voice over the station's speakers. "Please proceed to the main arena for the opening ceremonies." The group walked through wide corridors filled with aliens. Juan noticed how the other species stayed away from each other. The crystal beings walked in one group, the reptilians in another, and so on. Nobody mixed or talked to anyone different from themselves. The main arena was enormous. Thousands of seats surrounded a circular fighting area in the center. Juan had seen sports stadiums on Earth, but this was much bigger. Holographic displays showed information about each champion in languages he couldn't read. "The winner gets a seat on the Galactic Council," Nari explained, as they found their assigned places. "That's why this matters so much. Earth has never had a voice in galactic politics before." An elderly alien with 4 arms and silver skin stood in the center of the arena. His voice boomed through speakers as he began the opening ceremony. "Warriors of the galaxy," he said, "you are here to prove which species deserves to guide our Federation. Only the strongest will earn the right to speak for their people." The crowd cheered. Each species cheered loudest when their own champion was introduced. When Juan's name was called, the human section of the audience clapped, but it sounded small compared to the roars for other fighters. Veltar stood perfectly still when introduced, her crystal body reflecting the arena lights. Gask roared and beat his chest, showing off his sharp claws. Sin pulsed with bright colors that hurt to look at directly. "Let the trials of strength begin tomorrow," the announcer continued. "Tonight we celebrate with—" A loud crash interrupted him. The station shook and emergency lights began flashing. Sparks flew from damaged panels near the arena ceiling. "Hull breach in Civilian Section 7, a panicked voice said over the intercom. "Structural collapse in progress. Multiple casualties reported." The alien champions looked at each other uncertainly. This wasn't part of the tournament. Station security ran past them toward the damaged area. "We should return to our quarters," Veltar said to the other champions. "This is not our responsibility," Gask nodded. "Let the station crew handle their problems. We must prepare for combat tomorrow." But Juan was already moving. He pushed through the crowd toward the exit, following the security teams. "Where are you going?" Veltar called after him. "People are hurt," Juan said without stopping. "They need help." Nari and Baum ran after him. "Wait for us," Nari shouted, grabbing her medical bag. Veltar watched them leave with confusion. "Why would they risk injury before the tournament?" she asked the other champions. "Deathworlders are unpredictable," Gask said with a grunt. Perhaps they seek to scout the station's weak points for tactical advantage. Zin's energy form flickered with uncertainty. Their behavior pattern does not match combat logic, but Veltar found herself following the humans. Something about their urgency seemed different from what she expected from violent primitives. The damaged section was chaos. Metal beams had fallen from the ceiling, crushing shops and blocking corridors. Smoke filled the air, and the artificial gravity flickered on and off. Dozens of aliens were trapped under debris or cut off from safe areas. Juan was already on his hands and knees, crawling under a fallen beam toward a small opening where someone was calling for help. The space was barely big enough for a human to fit through, and the metal groaned dangerously. "The structure is unstable," a station engineer told him. "You could be crushed." "Someone's alive in there," Juan replied, squeezing through the gap. "A child, I think." Veltar arrived just in time to see Juan disappear into the dangerous space. "This makes no sense," she said to herself. "He gains nothing from this action." Nari was setting up a medical station in a cleared area. She opened her bag and began treating injured aliens. Even though their biology was completely different from humans, she worked with gentle hands, speaking in a soft voice even though most of them couldn't understand her words. Baum was already connecting portable power units to the emergency systems. He worked with the station engineers to restore lighting and life support to the trapped areas. "Move back," Juan's voice called from inside the collapsed section. "I'm bringing someone out." He emerged from the narrow space covered in dust and small cuts. In his arms was a young Xerion, barely alive but breathing. The crystal child's body was cracked but not broken. Veltar stepped forward in shock. "That is a youngling of my species." Juan gently placed the injured child in Nari's care. She was scared and alone. "I told her everything would be okay." "But why?" Veltar asked. "You do not know this youngling. She is not your species. You risked your life for a stranger." Juan looked at her with surprise. She needed help. "What other reason do I need?" The question hung in the air like something neither Veltar nor the other champions could understand. Around them, more humans were arriving to help with the rescue efforts. They worked together without orders, sharing tools and supplies with anyone who needed them. For the first time in her long life, Veltar began to wonder if the Federation had been wrong about humans. These weren't the savage Deathworlders she had expected. They were something else entirely, something she had no words for. The rescue work continued through the night. More humans arrived from Earth's delegation, including Tai, a specialist who had worked in disaster zones on Earth. He brought cutting tools and climbing equipment that the station didn't have. Juan had not stopped working since the accident began. His clothes were torn and dirty, and small cuts covered his hands and face. But every time someone suggested he should rest, he found another voice calling for help from the rubble. "There," he said, pointing to a pile of twisted metal. "Someone's trapped underneath." Veltar had been watching him for hours. She didn't understand why he kept pushing himself when he was clearly exhausted. On her world, warriors conserved their strength for important battles. But Juan seemed to think this was the most important battle of all. "You will injure yourself," she told him. "The tournament begins in less than a day." Juan looked at her while wiping sweat from his forehead. "Do you really think I care about some fighting contest when people are dying?" The question shocked her. The tournament was the most important event in the galaxy. Champions trained their whole lives for this chance. But this human was ready to throw it all away for strangers. Tai was working nearby, carefully cutting through a support beam that had trapped an elderly draconian. The reptilian alien was the same species as Gask, their natural enemy according to the history files. But Tai worked with the same care he would show anyone. "Almost got you free, sir," Tai said gently. The old draconian's eyes were wide with confusion. His people and humans had fought bloody wars just 50 years ago. "Why do you help me, human?" the elderly alien asked weakly. "Because you're hurt and I can help," Tai replied simply. He finished cutting the beam and carefully lifted it away. "Easy now. Let's get you to the medical station." Gask appeared in the corridor, having finally decided to see what the humans were doing. He watched in amazement as Tai gently carried the elderly draconian to safety. "In his culture, you helped your own species and no one else. Enemies were left to die." "This defies all logic," Gask muttered. At the medical station, Nari was treating aliens she had never seen before. Her human medical training was almost useless for their strange biologies. But she was learning fast. She had figured out that crystal beings like Veltar's people could be repaired with special light therapy. The energy beings needed different electrical frequencies to heal. Hold still, Nari told a small creature covered in blue fur. This might feel strange, but it will help with the pain. The alien child looked up at her with large, frightened eyes. Nari smiled and spoke in a soft, gentle voice, even though they didn't share a language. Somehow, her kindness came through anyway. Baum had connected his portable generators to the station's emergency systems. The human technology wasn't compatible with alien systems, but he made it work through clever engineering and determination. Lights came back on in the damaged sections and fresh air began flowing again. "Brilliant work," said one of the station engineers. "How did you know to cross-connect the power relays like that?" "I didn't," Baum admitted. "I just tried things until something worked. People needed power and air, so we had to make it happen." More aliens were arriving to watch the rescue efforts. Word had spread through the station that the human champions were ignoring the tournament to save lives. Some thought it was a trick or some kind of strategy they didn't understand. But as the hours passed, it became clear this was no trick. When the humans ran out of water, they shared their personal supplies with injured aliens. When food was scarce, they gave their own meals to alien families with children. Zin, the energy being, floated near the rescue site with growing confusion. His species was pure thought and energy. They barely understood physical bodies, let alone why someone would risk damage to help strangers. "Explain this behavior," Zin said to Veltar in his strange, musical voice. "I cannot," Veltar replied. "On my world, we protect our crystal communities. But only our own people. These humans seem to protect everyone. It makes no evolutionary sense." Zin pulsed with different colors. Helping other species provides no survival advantage. But as they watched, they saw something that challenged everything they thought they knew about evolution and survival. A section of damaged ceiling was about to collapse. Juan was pulling an injured alien to safety when he saw Veltar standing in the danger zone, too shocked by what she was witnessing to notice the threat above her. Without thinking, Juan threw himself toward her, knocking her out of the way just as several tons of metal crashed down. The impact caught him across the back and shoulder, driving him to the ground with a cry of pain. "Why?" Veltar gasped, kneeling beside him. "Why did you save me?" "I am your competitor. Your enemy." Juan tried to sit up, wincing from his injuries. "You're not my enemy. You're just someone who needed help." Nari rushed over to examine Juan's wounds. His shoulder was badly injured and blood soaked through his shirt. These injuries would definitely affect his fighting ability in the tournament. "You need medical treatment," Nari said firmly, "and rest. Real rest." But Juan was already trying to stand up again. "Are there more people trapped?" "Juan, stop," Nari said. "You've done enough. Let others help now." For the first time, Juan looked around and saw that other aliens had joined the rescue effort. Gask was moving heavy debris with his great strength. Zin was using his energy powers to provide light in dark spaces. Even some of the spectators had started helping, you see? Nari said with a smile. "Sometimes all people need is someone to show them what's possible." Veltar stared at Juan as Nari treated his wounds. In her long life as a warrior, no one had ever sacrificed themselves to protect her. Among her people, such actions were reserved for family members or sworn allies. But this human had risked his life for someone he barely knew. "I do not understand your species," she said quietly. "What's to understand?" Juan replied. "Someone was in danger. I helped them. That's what people do." "No," Veltar said, shaking her crystal head. "That is what humans do. The rest of us, we are still learning." Around them, the rescue continued. Humans worked alongside aliens, sharing tools, supplies, and effort without regard for species differences. Children who had been enemies just hours ago now played together while their parents worked side by side. Gask found himself helping Tay lift a heavy beam. "Your species confuses me, human." "How so?" Tay asked. "We have fought bloody wars. Your people killed thousands of my people. My people killed thousands of yours. Yet you saved my elder without hesitation." Tay paused in his work. "That was war. This is just people helping people. The war is over. The people who need help right now are still here." It was a simple answer, but it contained something revolutionary. The idea that past conflicts didn't have to define present actions. That enemies could become allies through simple acts of kindness. As the artificial dawn began to brighten the station's corridors, the last trapped civilians were brought to safety. The humans collapsed from exhaustion, their bodies pushed beyond normal limits, but they had saved everyone. Tournament officials had been demanding that the champions return to prepare for combat. But something had changed. The other champions were no longer interested in fighting. They had seen something that challenged everything they thought they knew about strength, survival, and what it meant to be a warrior. The real contest, they were beginning to realize, wasn't about who could fight the best. It was about who could be the best at being people. The rescue work took 3 full days. During that time, something extraordinary happened among the alien champions. They began to change. It started small. Gask offered to carry supplies for the human rescue teams. Sin used his energy powers to provide light and power where it was needed. Veltar helped translate between different alien languages when families were looking for lost members. Elder Kyrith, an ancient being from the Wisdom caste, watched everything from a safe distance. He had overseen hundreds of tournaments over the centuries. He had seen every kind of warrior, from brutal savages to cold, calculating fighters, but he had never seen anything like this. "Commissioner Valdris," he said to the tournament official beside him, "we may have made a serious error in judgment about the humans." Commissioner Valdris was angry about the whole situation. The tournament was supposed to start, but half the champions were too busy helping with rescue work to fight. "They're disrupting everything," he complained. "This is supposed to be a contest of strength, not some charity event." "Perhaps," Elder Kyrith said slowly, "we have been measuring the wrong kind of strength." On the 3rd day, Juan was working in a particularly dangerous area where the station's hull had cracked. The section was slowly losing air, and anyone trapped inside would die soon. The space was too small for the larger aliens to enter, and too dangerous for the station's robots. "I can fit through there," Juan said, studying the narrow opening. "Absolutely not," Nari said firmly. "Your shoulder is badly injured, and if that crack gets worse while you're inside, you'll be trapped with no way out." "But someone's alive in there," Juan insisted. "I can hear them breathing." Veltar stepped forward. "Then I will go. My crystal body can survive longer without air than your flesh form." Juan looked at her with surprise. "You don't have to do that. It's not your job." "I have watched you for 3 days," Veltar said. "You have shown me what it means to protect others. Now let me learn by doing." She squeezed through the narrow crack in the hull. Inside, she found a young alien from a species she had never seen before. The creature was small and furry, with large eyes and tiny hands. It was barely conscious and very frightened. "It's okay," Veltar said gently, trying to copy the soft tone Nari used with scared children. "I'm here to help." The little alien looked up at her crystal face and made a small sound. Veltar realized it was trying to say something, but she didn't know its language. Instead, she picked it up carefully and held it close to her chest, where the warm light from her crystal heart could comfort it. When she emerged from the damaged section carrying the small alien, something had changed in her face. For the first time in her long life, she understood what Juan meant when he said people needed help. "How did it feel?" Elder Kyrith asked her later when she was alone. "Strange," Veltar admitted. "On my world, we protect our crystal communities because they are ours. But this little one was not mine. Not my species, not my family, not my responsibility. Yet when I held it, I felt something I have no word for. The humans call it compassion," Elder Kyrith said. "It means caring for others not because you must, but because you choose to." "Why would evolution create such a feeling?" Veltar asked. "It provides no advantage." Elder Kyrith was quiet for a long moment. "Perhaps," he said finally, "we have been wrong about what advantages matter." Gask was having his own revelations. He had spent his whole life believing that strength meant dominating others. His people had conquered worlds by being the strongest, the most aggressive, the most willing to destroy their enemies. But watching Tai work had confused him. The human was smaller than Gask, weaker in raw physical power. Yet Tai accomplished things that Gask's strength could never achieve. He built bridges between different groups. He found solutions to problems that force couldn't solve. He made enemies into allies with nothing but patience and kindness. "How do you do it?" Gask asked Tai during a rest break. "How do you make others want to help you?" Tai thought about the question while sharing his water bottle with a tired alien child. "I don't make them do anything. I just show them that I care about them. When people know you care, they usually care back." "But why do you care?" Gask pressed. "These are strangers. Many are from species that have fought wars with your people." "That's exactly why I care," Tai said. If I only cared about humans, then I'd be just another human. But caring about everyone, that makes me part of something bigger. Gask stared at him. In his culture, being part of something bigger meant being part of a conquering army. But Tay meant something completely different. He meant being part of all life everywhere. Zin was perhaps the most confused of all the champions. As an energy being, he barely understood physical existence. Concepts like pain, tiredness, and death were foreign to him. But he was beginning to understand something else that was equally foreign. Love. He watched Nari work with injured aliens, staying awake for days to care for them. Her physical form was clearly suffering. Her body needed rest and food and medical attention. Yet she kept working anyway. Why do you damage yourself for others? Zin asked her in his musical voice. Nari looked up from the alien child she was treating. I'm not damaging myself. I'm using myself for something important. Your body requires rest to function properly. This is inefficient, Nari smiled. Some things are more important than efficiency. This little one needs help. That's more important than my comfort. Zin pulsed with colors as he processed this information. In his species, efficiency was everything. Energy was carefully conserved and used only when necessary. The idea of spending energy without getting something back was revolutionary. But as he watched Nari work, he began to see that she was getting something back. Every time she helped someone, her energy seemed to grow stronger, not weaker. Every smile from a grateful patient seemed to recharge her more than rest ever could. I think, Zin said slowly, your species has discovered a new form of energy, one that grows stronger when shared rather than weaker. By the end of the third day, all the trapped civilians had been rescued. The damaged sections were repaired and the station was returning to normal. But the champions were not the same beings who had arrived for the tournament. They gathered together in a quiet corridor, looking at each other with new understanding. They had fought alongside each other, shared resources, and protected each other's backs. The differences between their species seemed less important now. The tournament officials are demanding we begin combat tomorrow, Veltar said. I do not wish to fight any of you, Gask admitted. You have become, what is the human word? Friends? Friends, Juan confirmed with a smile. And friends don't try to hurt each other for the entertainment of others. But we must have a winner, Zin pointed out. The council seat must go to someone. Then let it go to the species that has shown us what real strength looks like, Veltar said, looking at Juan. Juan shook his head. This isn't about humans being better than anyone else. This is about all of us being better than we used to be. Elder Kirith approached them from the shadows where he had been listening. Perhaps, he said, it is time to change what we compete for. Instead of fighting to prove who is strongest, perhaps we should compete to prove who can protect the most, help the most, care the most. The champions looked at each other and nodded. They had discovered something more valuable than any prize the tournament could offer. They had discovered what it meant to be truly civilized. Tomorrow, the real competition would begin. Not a contest of strength, but a contest of character. And for the first time in galactic history, everyone would be rooting for everyone else to win. The tournament resumed on the fourth day, but nothing was the same. The alien champions entered the arena with a completely different attitude. Instead of trying to destroy each other, they competed with skill and grace, helping fallen opponents back to their feet and showing respect for everyone's abilities. The audience was confused. They had come to see brutal combat and displays of species superiority. Instead, they saw something they had no name for: sportsmanship. Council Representative Thex arrived from the galactic capital, disturbed by reports of corruption in the tournament. He was a tall, thin being with cold eyes and a voice like metal scraping against stone. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, watching Veltar help Zin recharge his energy after their match. Champions are supposed to defeat their opponents, not assist them. Commissioner Valdris was equally upset. The humans have contaminated the other champions with their primitive emotions. They're turning our great warriors into soft, weak caretakers. But Elder Kirith saw something different. Perhaps, he said quietly, they are turning our warriors into something better than warriors. Dr. Yuki, a human scientist who specialized in understanding different alien cultures, had arrived with the Earth delegation. She spent hours talking with the alien champions, helping them understand the strange new feelings they were experiencing. On your worlds, she explained to them, you evolved to survive by being the strongest. the most aggressive, the most willing to fight. But Earth was different. Earth was so dangerous that no single person could survive alone. We had to work together or die. Veltar listened carefully. So your compassion is an evolutionary advantage? Exactly, Dr. Yuki said. Humans who cared for others survived longer than humans who only cared for themselves. Over millions of years, caring became part of who we are. But you are still excellent warriors, Gask pointed out. Your people fight with great skill and courage in battle. Because we fight to protect others, Dr. Yuki explained. A human fighting for themselves is dangerous. A human fighting to protect someone they love is unstoppable. This revelation spread through the station like wildfire. Species that had built their entire civilizations on conquest and dominance suddenly realized they might have been approaching survival in the wrong way. Jin, a young human who had been among the rescued civilians, had made friends with alien children during the rescue efforts. Now he was walking through the station corridors, giving small handmade gifts to each of the champions. This is for being brave, he said to Veltar, handing her a drawing he had made of her carrying the small alien to safety. Veltar stared at the simple picture, drawn in crayon on a piece of paper. In her long life, she had received medals, trophies, and honors. But this crude drawing from a human child meant more to her than any of them. Thank you, she said, her voice strange and thick with emotion. Jin smiled and moved on to Gask. This is for you, he said, giving the big reptilian a small origami crane folded from station paper. What is it? Gask asked, carefully holding the tiny paper bird. It's a crane, Jin explained. My grandmother taught me how to make them. She said they bring good luck and peace. Gask looked down at the fragile paper creation in his massive claws. His people believed that only weapons and armor had value, but this small gift from a human child somehow seemed more precious than any sword. I will treasure it, he said solemnly. When Jin gave Zin a small crystal he had found, something extraordinary happened. Zin began to cry. Energy beings weren't supposed to be capable of tears. But somehow Zin's form flickered and pulsed with what could only be described as weeping. I do not understand, Zin said, his musical voice trembling. This child owes me nothing. I am not his species. I am not even truly alive as he understands it. Yet he gives me gifts and calls me brave. He's teaching you about love, Dr. Yuki said gently. Love doesn't need a reason. It just is. Representative Thex watched all of this with growing alarm. This emotional contamination must be stopped, he declared. The Federation is built on strength, order, and the natural hierarchy of species. If everyone starts caring about everyone else, our entire system will collapse. Maybe it should, said a voice from behind him. Thex turned to see Elder Kyrith approaching with several other high-ranking Federation officials. What did you say? Thex demanded. I said maybe our system should change, Elder Kyrith repeated. I have been watching these humans and what they've taught our champions. For the first time in centuries, I am seeing true strength. True strength is the ability to dominate others, Thex argued. No, Elder Kyrith said firmly. True strength is the ability to lift others up. The humans have shown us something we forgot long ago, that the measure of a civilization is not how well it can destroy, but how well it can create, protect, and care. Other aliens throughout the station were beginning to understand this as well. Parents from different species watched their children play together without fear or hatred. Workers who had never spoken to each other before were now sharing tools and helping each other complete tasks. The change was spreading beyond just the champions. Entire delegations were beginning to question the basic assumptions their civilizations were built on. Look around you, Elder Kyrith said to the assembled Federation officials. When has our galaxy ever been more peaceful? When have our people ever worked together so willingly? The humans haven't made us weak. They've shown us how to be strong in a way we never imagined. Representative Thex was furious. This is temporary madness. When the crisis is over, they will return to their natural competitive state. Will they? Elder Kyrith asked. Or have they discovered something better than competition? In the arena, the final matches were taking place. But instead of brutal combat, the audience was watching something unprecedented. Warriors competing to see who could show the most skill, the most honor, and the most respect for their opponents. When Juan faced off against the previous tournament champion, a being called the Destroyer, who had been bred purely for violence, everyone expected a return to the old ways. The Destroyer was massive, covered in natural armor and trained from birth to kill. He had never shown mercy to any opponent. His species believed that weakness deserved destruction, but when the match began, something unexpected happened. The destroyer fought with incredible skill and power, but Juan matched him with technique, speed, and something else, the absolute determination of someone fighting to protect others. The match was brutal and exhausting. Both warriors pushed themselves to their limits, but when the destroyer finally fell, defeated and helpless, everyone held their breath to see what Juan would do. In every previous tournament, the winner would either kill the loser or humiliate them to show dominance, but Juan did something that had never happened in the tournament's history. He knelt beside his fallen opponent and offered him water. "Good fight," Juan said, helping the destroyer sit up. "You're incredibly strong." The destroyer stared at him in shock. You are helping me? I tried to kill you." "That was the match," Juan said simply. "The match is over now. Now we're just two people and you're hurt." The gesture sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. In one moment, Juan had demonstrated something that challenged thousands of years of galactic civilization. He had shown that strength without compassion was incomplete, and that true victory meant everyone could walk away with dignity. The audience sat in stunned silence. Then slowly one being began to clap, then another. Soon the entire arena was on their feet, cheering not just for Juan's victory but for what his victory represented, the possibility of a better way to live. The final day of the tournament arrived, but the alien champions had made an unprecedented decision. They gathered in the arena before the largest audience in galactic history and made an announcement that would change everything. "We, the champions of our respective worlds," Veltar spoke for all of them, "declare that we will not fight each other for the entertainment of those who value destruction over creation." The crowd murmured in confusion. This had never happened before. Gask stepped forward. "Instead, we challenge any being who refuses to show mercy, who will not protect the innocent, who believes that strength comes from causing suffering. We will compete," Zin added, his energy form pulsing with determination. "But we will compete to see who can build the most, help the most, and care the most." Representative Thex was furious. "This is not what the tournament is for. You are here to prove which species deserves to rule." "No," said Elder Kirith, rising from his seat in the VIP section. "They are here to prove which species deserves to lead. And leadership is not about ruling, it's about serving." The crowd began to divide. Some aliens cheered for this new approach, while others demanded a return to the traditional brutal combat. The galaxy was splitting between those who wanted to embrace the human way and those who clung to the old systems of dominance. "You want a final match?" Juan asked, stepping into the center of the arena. "Then give me an opponent who represents everything we're trying to change." Representative Thex smiled coldly. "Very well. Face the executioner." A massive door opened at one end of the arena, and out stepped a being that made everyone gasp in fear. The executioner was not just a fighter. It was a living weapon created by genetic engineering to be the perfect killer. It had no emotions, no mercy, no capacity for anything except violence. "This creature represents pure combat evolution," Representative Thex announced. "It knows nothing but victory through destruction. Let us see how your human kindness fares against perfect violence." The executioner was 3 times Juan's size, covered in natural weapons, and moved with deadly grace. It had never lost a battle, never shown mercy, never done anything except kill. As the match began, it became clear that this was more than just a fight between 2 individuals. This was a battle between 2 completely different ideas of what strength meant. The executioner attacked with ruthless efficiency, using every technique designed to cause maximum damage and pain. It fought to destroy not just Juan's body but his spirit. But Juan fought differently. He didn't try to cause unnecessary pain. He defended himself skillfully, but every movement was calculated to protect rather than destroy. Even while fighting for his life, he was trying not to seriously harm his opponent. The other champions watched with growing understanding. He's not trying to defeat the executioner, Veltar realized. He's trying to teach it. "Teach it what?" asked Gask. "That there's another way to be strong." The fight was long and brutal. Juan took terrible damage, but he kept getting back up, not out of hatred or anger, but out of something more powerful. The absolute determination to protect everyone watching from having to live in a galaxy where strength only meant violence. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the executioner made a mistake. It overextended itself, leaving an opening that would allow Juan to deliver a killing blow. The entire arena held its breath. This was the moment that would define everything. Would Juan take the kill shot and prove that violence was ultimately necessary, or would he find another way? Juan looked at his fallen opponent, then at the crowd, then at his fellow champions. In that moment, he made a choice that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Instead of delivering a killing blow, Juan knelt beside the executioner and placed his hand gently on its chest. "I know you were made to be a weapon," he said quietly, "but you can choose to be something more." For a moment, nothing happened. The executioner stared at him with eyes that had never seen anything but targets to destroy. Then something impossible occurred. The executioner began to cry. It was the first emotion the creature had ever felt. Tears ran down its armored face as it experienced something completely foreign to its engineered nature. The feeling of being cared for rather than feared. I do not understand," the executioner said in a voice rough from disuse. "You could have killed me. Why did you not?" "Because killing you wouldn't make anyone safer," Juan said, helping the massive creature sit up. "Teaching you that there's another way to be strong, that might make everyone safer." The crowd was completely silent. They had just witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about power, strength, and what it meant to win. Then Jin, the human child who had given gifts to the champions, broke away from his family and ran into the arena. He walked up to the executioner, this terrifying creature that had been designed to kill, and held out a small flower he had picked from the station's garden. "This is for being brave enough to learn something new," Jin said simply. The executioner took the tiny flower with hands designed for destruction, holding it as carefully as if it were made of glass. Thank you, small human." That moment broke the spell. The entire arena erupted in cheers, not for violence conquered, but for violence transformed. Elder Kyrith stood up in his VIP box. "The tournament is over," he announced. "We have found our champions, not just of individual species, but of what all species can become." Representative Thex made one last attempt to maintain the old ways. "This proves nothing. Strength still comes from the ability to destroy." "You're wrong," said a new voice. The executioner was standing now, still holding Jin's flower. "I was the ultimate destroyer. I could kill anything, defeat anyone, destroy entire armies. But I was empty. This human showed me something stronger than destruction, the power to create, to heal, to protect." The crowd's cheers grew louder. Beings from hundreds of different species were standing and applauding, not just for the humans, but for the possibility of a better future. Over the following months, the changes spread throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council was restructured, with seats given not to the strongest fighters but to the best protectors and helpers. Representatives were chosen based on how well they cared for others, not how well they could defeat them. Species that had been enemies for centuries began working together on projects that benefited everyone. Children from different worlds played together in integrated schools. Scientists shared discoveries freely instead of hoarding them for military advantage. The humans were given not just a seat on the new council, but a special role as teachers and mediators. Alien species began sending their young people to Earth not to learn human fighting techniques, but to understand human compassion. Veltar established the first interspecies rescue service, with volunteers from every member world. Gask founded schools that taught strength through protection rather than domination. Zin created communication networks that helped different species understand each other better. Even the executioner found a new purpose, becoming a protector of the weak rather than a destroyer of enemies. The tournament still existed, but it had completely changed. Instead of competing to see who could cause the most damage, champions now competed to see who could prevent the most harm, who could build the most bridges between species, who could help the most people. And at the center of it all were the humans, the Deathworlders who had shocked the galaxy not with their capacity for violence, but with their infinite capacity for kindness. The galaxy had learned something revolutionary. True strength didn't come from the ability to destroy your enemies. It came from the ability to turn your enemies into friends. And in that lesson, Every species in the galaxy became champions of something far more important than any tournament. They became champions of each other. Years later, when young beings from across the galaxy learned about the great tournament, they didn't study the fighting techniques or battle strategies. They studied the moment when kindness defeated cruelty, when compassion conquered violence, and when a simple act of mercy changed the entire universe. The humans had taught them the most important lesson of all. In a galaxy full of warriors, the strongest person is the one who chooses to heal instead of harm, to build instead of destroy, and to love instead of hate. And that lesson would echo through the stars forever.